In this episode of BizJet TV, we're going to be looking at the Falcon 10X, comparing it to the Gulfstream G700. This is something one of you have asked me to do. So these are two brand new airplanes that are being built by these two manufacturers. So we're going to sort of look at them side by side and look at the pros and cons and that, and I'll give you a bit my take on this. Now, if you haven't subscribed to BizJet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel all about business aviation. By subscribing and liking this video, just help the algorithm let more people know about BizJet TV. We're here to educate you and make you understand that the business jet is more of a business tool than a luxury item. So let's get into the comparison of these two airplanes. So Dassault have announced the Falcon 10X a few months ago, a very interesting airplane. They've ditched the whole three-engine thing they've been going on for many years about. This is actually a two-engine aircraft. Two engines, very efficient Rolls-Royce engines. So don't be afraid of this plane just has two engines. But two engines, reliable, very good. Now, cabin-wise, the 10X is 16.4 meters in length, 2.77 meters wide, and 2.03 meters in height. So when you compare the cabin size to the Gulfstream G700, we see the G700 is longer. It's 17.35 meters, so almost a meter longer. But it's 2.49 meters on the width, so it's not as wide as the cabin of the 10X, and it's 1.91 meters in height compared to the 2 meters 03 which you have in the 10X. So the 10X is going to give you a bit more of a feel of a bigger cabin because of the height and the width. But in the Gulfstream, you're going to have a slightly longer cabin. Now, other aspect which is important, because as a passenger, obviously you're spending time in the cabin, so you're sitting in this airplane. Both have a range of 7,500 miles, so range is exactly the same. But on the cabin altitude, which is really, really important, in particular a very, very long flight, if you're going to be flying, from Hong Kong to New York to Shanghai, Los Angeles to Sydney, and you can do that in both these airplanes, okay, you're going to be in the air for a long time. And the cabin pressurization is going to be important. Now, both airplanes' top ceiling is 51,000 feet, but the 10X, they claim that it will be able to pressurize the cabin at 4,200 feet at 51,000 feet. Now, that's really, really low. Now, bear in mind, you probably won't be flying at 51,000 feet. You'll probably be flying maybe at 45,000 feet, where, you're going to have an even better cabin altitude. While the Gulfstream has a higher cabin altitude of 51,000 feet of 4,850 feet. So this is a 10X is beating the, as far as cabin altitude, beats the Gulfstream G700. Now, as far as speed's concerned, they both fly at the same speed. Maximum speed 0.925 mark on both aircraft, with the cruising at 0.85. So range and speed exactly the same. Landing performance, interestingly enough, as Dassault is always known for the shorter landing and takeoff performance of their aircraft. It's 6,000 feet for takeoff on the 10X compared to 6,250 on the Gulfstream. And then they only need 2,500 feet to land. So the Falcon 10X outperforms the Gulfstream in landing and takeoff performance. They both cost $75 million, so same price tag. Another interesting feature on the 10X, if we go into the cockpit, and me being a pilot, I look at that as well when I'm looking at technology in an aircraft. The Dassault have obviously looked at, the competitors, the Global 7500. They looked at the Gulfstream product, and they've tried to simplify things in the flight deck. So one of the things they've done here, for example, with the thrust levers, now they've got one thrust lever for two engines, and this is what they do in the Rafale fighter jet, which Dassault also designed. So they built this feature in there. Lots of technology to help the pilot and decrease the workload of the pilot. The seats in the cockpit also allow the seat to go back and the pilot to be able to have a nap, basically, and the seat to be lie flat, which is interesting. The way the aircraft is built, it does allow one pilot to fly along on his own while the other one rests. You still require two pilots, though. So from a technology standpoint, up in the flight deck, it's looking to me that Dassault's technology they're putting into this aircraft is more advanced than Gulfstream. But here's another really interesting point here. Now, the Gulfstream G700, the technology that's in the cabin and the technology that's in the flight deck and that is the same technology that's in the Gulfstream G500 and 600. Okay, now these aircraft are already certified and currently flying. Well, the Falcon 10X isn't certified yet, and it's not flying. Actually, the prototype hasn't been finished being built. So they're in the process of building the prototype. Then they'll have to do all the test flying. And as it's a new airplane, then they'll have to, get it out there and it will start flying with passengers on board. So now what happens with a new aircraft, and it's a brand new aircraft with new technology, very often the first few serial numbers tend to have snags. You also have the problem that the pilots aren't qualified. They just qualify on this new airplane. So they start to fly an airplane when they're not quite sure what it can do. Now, I've had this experience myself, being one of the first pilots in the world to be certified on the Dornier 328 jet. And the airplane was doing things, and sometimes the checklists, there weren't checklists for certain things that would happen on the aircraft. So as pilots, we were almost like test pilots, and we need to, figure things out, relay them back to the manufacturer. They would make changes in checklists and procedures, and also in some of the technology in the aircraft. So this is what usually happens in the beginning. So if we put these two aircraft side by side, I would say that from a cabin comfort standpoint, and from a performance and flight deck and that, the 10X is certainly a better aircraft than the Gulfstream G700. But, and this is really, really important, now all these manufacturers, even the Global 7500, they're talking 7,500 nautical mile range. Now, how many times a year are you actually going to need that range? Number one. Number two, do you really want to be sitting on a private jet for 13 hours? Number three, if you're going to be flying so many hours, you're going to have to be carrying a third pilot to relieve one of the two pilots because of duty times. That's another aspect which is important. So is there really a need for 7,500 nautical mile range? Do you need 7,500 nautical mile range? Because let's say you are going to fly from Hong Kong to New York, or from LA to Sydney, okay, or one of these long distance trips. Do you really want to be sitting on the airplane for 14 hours? Wouldn't you better off organize your business trip so you can stop somewhere else, have a meeting, do a deal, whatever you're going to be doing, and then leave the next day? This allows your crew to rest. It allows you to rest. It allows you to do, what you're flying over a city, you might as well land there and do a deal instead of just flying over it. Do you really need this range? So that's really an important question. I mean, I did write an article a while back, and I encourage you to go and click on the link below, about is speed the future of business travel. Because at the end of the day, my criticism towards all the manufacturers is they're just tweaking their designs a little bit more range, improving the pressurization, the cabin comfort, the cockpit, all this kind of stuff. But these airplanes are still flying at the same speed they were flying 50 years ago. So we need more speed. This is a shout out to those aircraft manufacturers. We need more speed. That's where we should be going, instead of going, tweaking things. I mean, what's best? The Falcon 10X or the Gulfstream G700? Well, I've already told you that, if we look at the numbers and we look at the cabin and all that, the 10X is a better airplane than the G700. But is it going to be reliable? Because this is the problem. A lot of pilots, a lot of people that have, for example, the Falcon 7X, they're complaining the airplane goes tech a lot. But I've got a good friend of mine that's been on BizJet TV, and he's got over 4,000 hours in the 7X, only gone tech twice in 4,000 hours. And he said to me, the reason why the airplane's going tech is because the pilots aren't understanding the systems. Now, this technology in these new aircraft, the avionics are very, very sophisticated. It's important that the pilot understands that he's no longer flying a plane, he's flying a flying computer. And so you have to use the avionics for what they were designed for. So it's very important that the pilot understands this, and your pilots get trained in a certain way and operate the aircraft the way it was designed. Because otherwise, it will go tech. And as I always tell people, you're not buying a jet, you're buying time. Now, will the 10X be more reliable than the G700? Well, that's a question mark, because the 10X isn't out there yet. While the technology of the G500 and 600 is out there, they are currently flying, and the G700 is just a bigger version of those two aircraft. So the G700 in the beginning will be more reliable than the 10X, because the 10X being a new airplane, it will have to go through, it will have a few snags and whatever, and they'll have to overcome it. A lot will depend on the pilots, the design, will these things work first time round, and that. So you have to bear that one in mind. If you want to buy the 10X because you like the shape, you like the performance, you like everything, be prepared that this airplane may break down a few times in the beginning, because the snags are being solved. While on the G700 you won't have this problem. So this is something that to bear in mind. But as I always tell people, I can only give general information here. I do encourage you to contact me, reach out, let's do a call. First call's free, and let's have a chat about your business needs, and let's see if you really do need a 7,500 nautical mile aeroplane, and if that's the case, let's look at the options that are out there, and let's try and figure out what the best option for you is. So, while we're looking on paper and we're comparing these two aircraft, there is an element here which is really fundamental in order to be able to compare two aircraft, and that's the human element, meaning who is actually buying the aircraft, how are they going to be using this aircraft, where they're going, what's their mission profile. Once we have that variable, and I know more about you and your business, then I will be able to tell you, buy this jet instead of that jet because. So it's very, very important to do this. Otherwise, it's difficult to compare one airplane to the other without knowing who we're comparing the airplane for. And so this is really, really important. So anyway, that's all from me here. Now I'd ask you to go and look at this video here about time to buy, time to bring new life into an older jet. Very interesting about buying an older aircraft, which is different to buying one of these two new ones we just talked about. Go and have a look at that and see about the older aircraft that are out there, what can be done refurbishment wise and whatever. That's an interesting one. And if you haven't subscribed to BizJet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. That's all from Fabrizio on BizJet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.